Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Made in New England interview series, where we talk with New England-based companies and the people who lead them. I'm your host, Steve DeVries, and today I'm joined by Dan Yarrington of Tabletop Tycoons, located in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right. Dan, maybe you could kick us off and tell us a little bit about you and Tabletop Tycoon.
Sure. So very briefly, we're Tabletop Tycoon is a game publisher. So we make board games, tabletop games that you play around the table face to face with people. A lot of people are like, oh, you make games, video games, digital games. Like, no, not really. We make board games. So I've been in the industry since 96. Our company was founded in 1999. So we're a little over 25 years now. And we just publish board games. So that's what we do. We have a warehouse here by the Manchester Airport in Londonderry, and we ship and sell games all over the world. So that's kind of our core business. I myself, I'm married. I have three kids. We live right in Londonderry, and I play a lot of games, as you can imagine. We have an arcade, old-fashioned video game arcade on the west side of Manchester right now. I read a lot of books. I watch a lot of movies. That's kind of what I do. I enjoy mowing the lawn and chopping up trees when they fall down in the middle of my lawn, which just happened recently. So I got
Oh,
to go
yeah.
clear that out. But otherwise, pretty simple. I like to spend time with my family. I like to play games. I like to have fun, and then we make fun and we kind of export it all over the world. And we do that through a lot of sales and a lot of giving initiatives. So we donate to Toys for Tots. We're a five-star sponsor, and all of our sales for all of our companies benefit Toys for Tots. So all of our sales go towards helping kids get games because that's kind of our business. So we can do that pretty well.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at your website, tabletoptycoon.com right now. So many cool games. So first question that comes to mind is, how do you create these games? Like, where did this all come from? Is it from your imagination? Do you have a team of people? How does this all work?
Sure. So again, very broadly speaking, because there's a lot of detail to that question. But so I got in the industry in retail originally. I was selling stuff online. I was selling like Pokemon cards and Magic cards and stuff like that. And then we were running events, tournaments, and conventions and stuff. And then we ran retail. We had up to 5 retail stores at one point. We then got into distribution and logistics, with working with hundreds of different publishers, independent publishers, people that created games, and shipping and selling those all over the world. And actually, the last thing that we did, and this started in about 2012, is publishing, is making our own games. So very typical, what you kind of hinted at there is a very typical pathway, which is like, I, Dan Yarrington, came up with the game and I published it. This is my great game and it's amazing. I'm going to share it with people. And that's a very common thing. We actually came out the other way. So we kind of learned the whole industry from the ground up. And now we're making our own games. So what does that involve, right? What is making your own games? If you're a book publisher, does that mean you're the author of all the books? Does that mean you illustrate all the titles? Well, no, of course not, right? It means that you publish them. What is publishing? So in this space, it means that we will either design a game internally, meaning you'll come up with the rules for it, or we will take a game externally that's submitted to us, or we'll prospect those from independent designers. So if Steve came up with the game, Steve says, I've got this great rule set. That's all it is. It's a rule set. It's maybe a prototype. It's a Word document. It's a piece of paper. It's just an idea, right? And I've got these ideas of what I want the components to be and all that sort of stuff. Our job as a publisher is to fundamentally evaluate, not is this a good game or is it fun? Those are very subjective questions. Then the answer is going to be it depends on who you are and how you're playing, what the context is. Our job professionally is this going to be a viable product? Meaning, can it make money? Will it provide good value to the customer, enough to make them want to buy it? So that's a lot of what we're evaluating. And then we coordinate, we do development, we do editing of the rules, we coordinate all the illustration and art, graphic design, layout. We'll coordinate the actual production. We use facilities in China, in Eastern Europe, and here in the US over the years. So we don't manufacture the games here. Like, we don't actually have a factory where we make them. We use outsourced facilities for that. We'll coordinate all of that. We'll, of course, pay for it. And we'll do all the boring and exciting, sales and marketing and bookkeeping and all the stuff that goes on with a regular business. So we're about a dozen people for the company. So yeah, it's not just me. I'm the publisher, but we have a whole team of people that does that. And if you expand that out to all the contractors, like the independent artists and all these other people that we work with who are not employees, they might be all over the world, but that's dozens of people that contribute to each game. Could be play testers, could be rules editors, could be, the person who generates the royalty payments to designers. There's all different elements. A lot of it's very business. It just happens that the product is, we make board games. And so the benefit of that, everybody knows board games. And people are like, oh, I don't really play games. I don't really play games. And I'm like, they're like, but I really love this one game. Everybody has that one game, whatever the game is. I love bridge, I love chess, I love this or that or the other thing. So we, as kind of a culture and also just as a human species, we love games, entertainment. So those have been around for thousands of years, and we are just in a very small subset. Technically, board games is in a subset of toys, the toys industry, and then it's like games, like hobby games, and then board games is a subsection of that. We're kind of in the same bucket or adjacent to like trading card games like Pokemon and Magic, that sort of thing. But we're over here in board games. So it's a decent sized market. It's probably I would say for board games, it's probably half a billion to maybe 800 million in sales total. And there's different echelons of that. So like we're nowhere near the tier of like a Mattel or Hasbro or Spin Master or something. But you will find our games in Target. Everdell is our most successful game. You can find out more about that on tabletoptycoon.com. But you'll find it on Amazon, on Target. We're in Barnes and Noble. We're going into Walmart. And of course, you can just buy those from us directly. So through tabletoptycoon.com, that's where a lot of our games start, and we make new games all the time. And then that will kind of build, if those games are successful in initial launch, that will then build into other channels.
Wow. Tons of information in that response. That was fantastic. So you've been in business, I think you said, since 1999 with
Yep.
Tabletop Tycoon. What has driven your success to this point?
So I would say me personally is resilience, because you have to fail a lot in order to get to success, in my experience. Maybe some magical person is out there that has never made a mistake and just successful all the time, but not in my case. I basically make a career of making mistakes and getting back up again, right? Falling down either because somebody pushed me or because I tripped or I just threw myself on the ground unintentionally, right? But that is resilience is one of the biggest things. And then you just got to put a lot of grit and hard work into it. And then there's a scotch of luck in there as well, right? And so I'm a big fan of thinking that like luck/opportunity is largely the same thing. People just interpret it for whether you take action, essentially. So it's like, hey, this lucky opportunities can be happening to people all the time, but if they don't take the opportunity, then they perceive like, oh, I never get these opportunities. It's like, well, no, maybe the opportunity like walked right by you and you just let it walk by. So I'm much more of an action kind of driven person. So I probably jump on more opportunities than I should. And then resilience there is that I jump into things I probably shouldn't do or I shouldn't do quickly or as fast as I do. And then I go, oh, but I learned a bunch of stuff from that mistake. And then I take that and I adjust very quickly to the next thing. So that's kind of me personally. As a company, I think that we're a hit driven industry, just like movies or music or books or anything. You generate a lot of stuff, you put it out there. There is no magic formula for making successful games, because if there was, companies like Hasbro, who are the agglomeration of like 100 years of value of different brands, they would just be making success after success after success. So even companies that have been doing this for generations don't have a magic to it. What you can more often say is what not to do when you're publishing board games. So you don't overprice it, you don't undercost it, you don't underprice it. Basically, like you need to have enough margin to be successful. If you succeed, you need to be spending enough money, but you need to be not spending too much money. So there's a lot of balancing acts that go into the basic business fundamentals. But the real success of it is once you get a hit. In our case, Everdell is very successful. We have some Princess Bride board games that we've done, and that's a good example. We did 6 Princess Bride games. We've actually had the license since 2013. We've renewed it many times, and we had 6 games that we made over the years. Now, only 3 of those we still publish today, and we keep reprinting. So clearly, 50-50 on whether or not they were successful. And then there's degrees of success, right? If I'm thinking about like, does a movie make its budget? That's kind of a metric of success. And most movies don't. Most movies lose money. But a lot of these movies that go, oh, well, we're a small budget movie, our budget's only $1 million or $2 million or whatever. Those are the ones like Paranormal Activity or something where you see them blow up and be big hits. And that's the same thing in board games. If you've set the fundamentals correct, meaning your costs are correct and your pricing value is correct and everything, then when you get a hit, you can harvest that over time. So that's the kind of business answer to like, how as a board game publisher are we successful? It's pretty simple. Just get a hit and then manage it well. And of course, the detail, the laugh is like, yeah, but that's hard. Like that's a hard thing to do because you have to have the business fundamentals. I had somebody come to me the other day. It's a funny story. This is years ago.
Mhm.
And they said, oh, I've got all these great ideas. We talk to people all the time. We get hundreds of submissions for games. We actually don't accept outside submissions anymore for that reason. There's just too many. And And they said, I got all these great ideas. I know how to do all this. I know how to design it. Like that was the only thing to make the game, like just the design. Like I've done the, this tiny percentage of it, of the overall work. They're like, this is the game. I just need somebody to do the business. And I was like, so everything? Like it's like I wrote a book and there are self-published authors, but like imagine like writing a book back before there were like web publishing and self-publishing services, right? You're just like, I wrote this book, but I'm going to do the marketing and I'm going to do the bookkeeping, I'm going to do all this stuff. And then not only saying that, but I want to be a publisher, right? So there is a model in our industry that designers will submit their games to publishers. Publishers are basically bearing the financial risk and therefore gaining some of the financial reward. And typically the designers will get a royalty based on successful titles. Now, again, if most games aren't successful from a sales standpoint, then that's not really a very profitable. Like there are not a lot of full-time game designers because they don't generate enough revenue, right? They might do it as a side hobby, they might have a job and they do it for fun. That's all fine. Same thing I'm sure applies to musicians and people that make movies and people that do all these different things that we would think of as entertainment, but they're kind of hobbies that turn into businesses. And then at the upper echelon, those are all the people we see. We see the Monopoly and the Uno and these games like, oh, that must be a business. Yes, it is. But Uno started in whatever 1962 or 1950s. I don't even know when, but way back when. Monopoly is like 100 years old, right? So even the successes from those times take a long time to build up to their current echelon. So that's kind of the answer on the personal side and the business side.
I love it. And you mentioned Uno, which was one of my favorite games growing up, and still play it from time to time. So, um, next question. So you mentioned metrics a little bit. So, just for the business geeks like me that are curious about what kind of metrics a game publishing company would really focus on, what would that be? What do you know? What do you use to know that your business is healthy?
Sure. So at a top line, we're a product driven industry. So we're not a SaaS model or something like that. So like at the end of the day, our business model is pretty simple. We make product and we sell it. So of course we need sales. That's our key metric. Like we need sales. We need gross profitability and then we need net profitability. So our expenses can't be too high, but we have to have that gross profitability. That's the biggest mistake most publishers make is they overload the games and they don't charge an appropriate amount for them, and then they realize like everybody else is making money on this game, but I as the publisher am not making enough money. So you have to have that in order to be able to pay your staff well and provide benefits and provide longevity and to survive the cycles of publishing where things go up and down. And that's just the nature of kind of the industry that you get waves of, hey, this thing is selling really hot, et cetera. So obviously we look at sales numbers. We then from there to manage that, we look at what the sell through is and what our inventory levels are. And we're looking at that every month for what we need to reorder. Then we're paying attention to supply chains. How long does that reorder cycle take? And that varies. Like during COVID, it could have been a year to get something, maybe a year and a half, right? Just shipping, just one piece of it, shipping if it's coming from China, let's say on a container, that could be 45 days. It could be 6 months, right? Depending on the conditions. Right now, it's a little slower because of the Panama Canal. So these are all kind of macro things that we pay attention to. But as far as the metrics, we're looking at sales, of course. We're looking at like how many successful titles can we put out defined as profitable titles, right? Not games that we think are fun. We obviously think all the games we make are fun for certain audiences because otherwise we wouldn't make them. It's like, okay, but did that resonate is what we call that. Did it resonate with the market? Once we take it out there, we market it for a year, we take it to conventions, we send out media copies, we do ads promoting it, we talk about it, we show people the game, they play it. And games themselves are a nascent marketing piece. They get out on people's tables, people play them, then you go, what's this game? Uno? I don't speak Spanish. And you're like, no, that's okay, it's really fun. And the players, infect effectively, they spread the game to other people. There's kind of a vector effect that happens there. So that's the sort of thing we look at, which will be reflected in a very simple sales metric, which is just how many units are we selling? And are those sales going up or down? And then you need to know that by the time you run out of your first initial stock of products. And so we will do pre-sale campaigns. We've done over 150 Kickstarter campaigns. And so we'll do a lot of pre-orders, campaigns like that, so that we can find out, like, we know this game is good. We know people are going to want it. But we don't know how many. We don't know if it's 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000. And the risks associated with producing all of those are very different. So those are all ways that we can influence the number of units that we move at whatever price they move at. That generates your profitability. And then there's a bunch of other boring business metrics that just like every business has to pay attention to. What's your AR cycle? What's your AP cycle, et cetera.
Sure.
So once we got to be a profitable business, that got pretty simple. Like it's like, okay, like it's a lot easier to pay your bills when you have money, right? It's hard to pay your bills when you don't have money. So if you build a good engine that's generating money, then now it's easier to manage these things. But you still have to be looking at every individual thing. We do this all the time. We're going to try a new marketing thing. All right, well, let's run it for 3 months. What were the metrics from that campaign? How many coupon codes did we get redeemed? And we're big about tracking those things. Like we're a small company. We don't do Super Bowl commercials. We don't do TV ads. We don't do that stuff because that's broad advertising. If I'm Coca-Cola, that makes sense. I need to keep Coca-Cola top of mind. So when people walk into wherever Coca-Cola is, that's there. We focus on more ground level stuff. That's like, let's go get the game on people's tables, have them play it, make sure the distribution's set up so that they can get it in a local place, and then keep trying to drive that forward. And all of that is just to lead to how many people can enjoy the game. That's the goal.
That is, you just really open up the whole game publishing world for me. So I appreciate that. So let's talk about what excites you about your business. What's the future of your business as you look out on the horizon? What do you get excited about?
Sure. So it's pretty easy. I'm looking behind my monitor here. I have a whole shelf of games, and so we have over 1,000 games probably in our library here in the office. And so it's always the next game is the answer. Like I'm always excited about the next game. Could be a game we're making. We don't make that many games a year, small number, but it could just be the next game that's coming out from the industry that I'm going to play and enjoy and some new idea. And so that's always the benefit of this kind of being a perpetual entrepreneur, as I call myself, is that I can be doing the same thing, game publishing, but effectively I'm doing a different thing every time I make a new product. So if I make Deadly Dowagers, that's very different than Alien Frontiers. That's very different than Princess Bride Battle of Wits. These are all different things. So it kind of scratches that entrepreneurial itch and keeps me a little more engaged than I would be if I was like, be a bookkeeper, enter all these things. Now next month do the same thing. Now next month do the same thing. That doesn't personally drive me a lot. So I'm always looking forward to that next game and the experiences of that. We just had game night last night. We played 3 new games. One of them was Groundhog Day. So 2 of the games I did not particularly enjoy. I basically I have a whole method for culling our collection. So we have seedlings in our game collection that I haven't played yet. And then once I play them, they either become kindling and they're getting out of the collection, we're selling them or donating them, or they're evergreen and they stay in the collection. I will play them again. And so I found one evergreen out of 3 games, which is good. So I won't talk about the ones that became kindling, but I will talk about the evergreen. So I played Groundhog Day. It's by Funko Games. It's based on the movie. It's a licensed title, and it was just a quick, fun game. There's nothing too fancy about it. It's a cooperative game. You're all playing real time. You're trying to come up with the perfect day. Like you're trying to learn the lessons over the course of the movie and come up with the perfect day. And they're very kind of neat deck downcycling mechanic, basically a diversification mechanic, where you're then doing that, and everybody plays together. It took like 15 minutes. Great, perfect game, right? Now I could play a 4-hour game that could also be great, but it just depends. So that's where the variety of experience, that's what drives me. I'm always trying to learn something new. I'm always trying to do something different. And even within the same job, which is being a board game publisher, there's a huge amount of variety there. So that's what drives me to excitement. And that's also what leads to the success of the business is you come up with that next game that's going to resonate with people. Once it resonates, that's another engine. It's kind of like another flywheel. So
But you got my wheels spinning because every year my family and I get together with my friends and their families for a long weekend. And last year someone brought a game that was, it was a big hit. It was good for kids and adults. It was fast hitting, and I want to be the person that brings the new game this year. So I can't wait to start checking out all your stuff and try and figure out what is the right game for that environment and situation. So
and that's always the question, right? Is people, we had retail stores for a long time. We actually do still have a store at the arcade here in Manchester. And so we have a full line of board games. And when people walk in, they go like, well, what games do you like? And I said, that's not really the relevant question you should be asking. What games do you like? And then that even isn't a simple question. Who are you playing with? How many players is it? What do they like? Do they want to play a long game, a short game? So there's so many questions there. And that's the benefit of having so much variety. There's thousands of new games come out every year. And there's probably hundreds of like true double, A level evergreen titles like Uno, Monopoly, and Cards Against Humanity and stuff like that are established as like go-to games. Once you start diving under the surface a little bit, and you're like, I don't really like those. I don't like board games because they're all boring. You probably just haven't found the game that you like yet. That's the reality. And so listening to people and finding out what they like, even if they don't know what the game is, right? That's the conversation you typically have with people to kind of guide them to the right game, whether it's probably by us or anybody else, is just, hey, what are you looking for? Oh, we really like this game. We like this type of game. We like this type of game. But I really like games. We just list off like 4 things that you know about games you might like. And once you find the games that resonate with people, that it's a whole different world, right? Nobody wants to sit around a table and play a boring game. But a game that's boring for one group could be super exciting for another group, right? And so it's all about finding that match. And that's the challenge in this wide a market of variety, right? Of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different board games that exist. But it's also really cool because then there's always something new and exciting that you can discover. You're never going to run out of that. You schedule a weekly game night, or even if you just get together the holidays and play, you're never like, oh well, we're out of games to play, nothing new to play. Like that's never going to happen because there's so many people making games. So
So thinking about your business and where you fit in the board game world, if you could take a magic wand and wave it and make one thing happen, what would that be?
That's a good question. I would speed things up. Things in this industry take a long time to come from idea to fruition. And a lot of that is elapsed time, meaning it's not effort time, it's not effort hours, it's elapsed hours. It's just like, okay, we're waiting for this, we're waiting for this, we're waiting for this. And some of those things are necessary. You want some time to cogitate on things, but a lot of those things, if I could cut down on the amount of time in between steps that we're just waiting, that's what I would do. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges for consumer product manufacturing generally, is that the distance between when you come up with a figment or an idea for a product and when you can manufacture it, create it, deliver it, sell it, get that feedback loop going, and then recycle it, meaning make more once you sell out. That's one of the biggest challenges. So we are very focused on shortening those cycles, and that's what I would. There are certain laws of physics and human nature and everything that you can't permutate. You can't just adjust. And so in this case, I would say, okay, well, if I had a magic wand, I would make those cycles faster, so that you could iterate more quickly without spending more staff time and more elapsed time. Because the phrase I always use is there's so many games and there's so little time. We only have so long in our lives, and there's so many games that we want to play. And I will never play all the games I want to play, but I'd like to be able to play more. So I'd like to be able to speed things up.
Love it. So you're a New England-based business. You told me before we started recording, I think that you moved here. You've been in New Hampshire for over 20 years. So what has being in New Hampshire or New England in general meant for your business, pros or cons?
Yeah, I mean, for publishers, honestly, I know publishers all over the world. It doesn't really. I mean, you have the regular impacts that you would have by anywhere being on the coast, being in an expensive area, housing costs are high, et cetera. But our relative cost, like for our overall, it's more hard when you're starting. So I'd say that was harder when we were starting a business. Now that we're established, we have a relatively small number of staff relative to our revenues. So that cost, I think we have good pay, we have good benefits. Folks can afford to live in New England. We moved here because we love this area. We're from Western New York originally, and just this, I always say we have everything here except deserts. I can go to the beach, I can go to the mountains, I can go to the lakes. I can just enjoy walking down a trail. It's close enough to Boston and Manchester and areas that you can kind of get to do different things. It's not where I grew up. You would drive 45 minutes to go to a restaurant like that. That's the distance. So it's not that, right? So that's the benefit. I'd say the challenge of being in New England, in the US, there's different challenges in each place. For us, it doesn't heavily weigh in any different category. I've actually run before pre-COVID. We ran remote for 7 years. We had an office and stuff, but we had staff overseas in Australia and the UK, and we had 7 different shipping depots all over the world, and we coordinated logistics with all those places. So whether we're working in person with people, like here in the same room or the same building where I am now, or we're working with people remotely, uh, you're always working with people all over the place. That's the nature of kind of a global business. So it'd be different if we were on a car wash, right? We wouldn't care what was happening outside of our territory. Like our local territory is all we really care about. But in our case, we are a global business. That's just the nature of producing these things and exporting them all over the place. So I don't think, if I were in Missouri or New Hampshire or Oregon or California, there would be challenges and benefits of each of those locations, right? As the residents of those places would tell you. But we haven't found any significant pros or significant cons from a business standpoint being here. Uh, Obviously, New Hampshire itself, we still pay business taxes. Sure, we don't pay personal income taxes, but we pay two different business taxes: business enterprise tax and business profits tax. And for people that think there's no taxes in New Hampshire, it is a lot lower tax. That's true. But go register your car sometime, compare that to other states, and even though that's technically not a registration, it's a fee, not a tax. There's plenty that you pay. So I still think it's a great place. It's a great deal. We've been here 20 years, since '03, and we chose to come to New Hampshire. So we love it. We still love it. We're raising our kids here. And we have no plans to leave. It's a great place. But if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I can't I'm not in New England, I can't make board games. No, you can make them wherever you want. There's people all over the world that make these things. It's a relatively kind of quick thing to set up. So I don't think New England specifically has any major pros or cons for our type of business.
So last question then. So you sort of segued it for me. Any advice for budding business leaders, maybe in the board game community, but just for similar types of businesses in general? Any advice for those types of people that are entrepreneurial and want to start something similar to what you're doing?
Yeah, and even if you're starting anything, doesn't matter if it's similar to what I'm doing. First of all, you can call me and go to tabletoptycoon.com. You can email me through there or call us, and we're available. We do kind of mentoring for people as well. There's actually some local people that are just visiting with us recently. But the first most important thing I think is action. I think most people tend towards plan first, which is good. You have to plan and you have to take action. But I've seen a lot of, they say they're entrepreneurs, and I question that because they're not doing anything. They're doing a lot of, like, it's like they're entrepreneuring to be on a committee or something. They like want to, and that might just be a more academic pursuit. They want to study, they want to talk about it, they want to write a plan. I'm like, yeah, you're always doing that. Like, you're always writing plans, but you have to implement action. You have to do something to get feedback on the plan to find out if it's going to do well and what you need to adjust. Not if you need to adjust the plan. You will have to adjust the plan. Something you did is wrong. And so building up, at least in my case, from my perspective, that resiliency of like, take action, learn, stop, think about it, now execute, now fail again, now learn, execute, keep doing that, right? That's a never-ending cycle. I could live to be 150 and I would not be out of things to learn, right? There'd be certain things I'm like, I've learned enough, or I don't want to do that or whatever, but you got to start. That's the number one thing. And you can start small. You don't have to jump all the way in. Just start doing something, whatever it is, and get in the habit of being able to do things, to execute things, to accept failure, to learn from that failure, to not hide from it and say, oh, it was all these other, it was other people that caused me to fail. It was the world in general. You're never going to succeed in that case. You can't control the world. You can only control what you do, but you have to do. So you stop, you think, you do, you stop, you think, you do. You just keep doing that over and over again. But the core of that is action that I see most people missing. They want things to happen. Nothing's going to happen unless you do it.
There you go. And so you'll never finish learning and you'll never run out of games to play. That's what we've learned today from you. So I appreciate you coming on. Our guest today is Dan Yarrington, again, with Tabletop Tycoon. Dan, you've been a fantastic guest. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. We'll be back with another episode. Have a great day.